welcome to all those who have joined us. As you may know, my name is Mia Cash. I'm Overpass's Talent Advocate Manager. Really excited to host part two of our Handling Objections series with Overpass Sales Manager Dennis Hamilton. And today, our guest account executive is Ellen Roberts. We're looking forward to hearing from her as well. So, Dennis, I'm going to pass it over to you to kind of explain what part two will be covering, and we can kick it off from there. Just as a reminder to our attendees, if you have a question, we will have time for Q&A at the end. Be sure to pop the question in the chat or the Q&A button at the bottom, or if you would like, you are also able to speak, and we can discuss that once the presentation is over. So Dennis, gonna go ahead and pass it to you.
Awesome. Good day, everybody. So last week, we started a three-part series on objections. And last week, we covered kind of a dual topic. So first of all, we split them into three different categories. Whether your prospect would had a question, whether they were simply making a statement, or whether it was a true objection. So last week, we focused in on if they're just asking a question, which basically is respond and bring them a trial close question. So simply answer the question. The biggest issue in objection handling is if you handle something as an objection that's not truly an objection, that's a statement or a question, you will always come off defensive or trying to justify your position for your product or service. So this, in the second part, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to talk about when people make negative statements during a presentation and how to handle that. And I put 4 examples together today for everybody to look at, which are 4 really basic core sales ideas that you can use inside your presentations to basically, and the current day term is more rebuttal than sales idea. So in case you were wondering, this is the exact same as many clients will call a rebuttal in a presentation, but it's a basic sales idea. Can everybody see my screen in the presentation? Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. So let's get started. Again, each time we want to explain the why we're looking at a specific topic. And in this particular case, let's talk about statements. A negative statement is not an objection and can usually be handled with a very quick sales idea. Number 1. Number 2, sales ideas reorient your conversation and get your presentation back on track. In other words, you don't want your prospect to totally derail your presentation. These are designed to address their concern while bringing you right back on track on where you want to be inside your discovery or unpacking your value proposition with your prospect. And then the third point, handling objections during the presentation can exponentially increase your closing rate, therefore your income. None of this I would think that most of us aren't doing this for our health only. We're doing this for money. And the better you become in sales at handling objections, the more money you're going to see that you create for your time invested. So let's talk about some tried and true ones. Very first one is feel, felt, found. And we're going to go through that in just a minute. And that's identifying with how the customer feels, reacting to how other people have felt, and then relating what those people have found when they did business with you or purchased your product or service. Reduction to the ridiculous is the second one. In reduction to the ridiculous, this relates to minimizing the cost. So in other words, let's say I had a $300 a month subscription service, that would be about $9.95 a day. Make sense? And then the third one, which I used a very old title for this and probably shouldn't have mentioned smoking, yet here we are, is the Cokes and Smokes close. This is on lower dollar products usually when the customer has certain bad habits, like we were just talking about coffee when we were leading into a webinar of, let's say they buy the $4 a day cup of coffee, et cetera, and how that accrues up into a monthly expense and comparing that to the expense of your product. And then comparison analysis. Comparison analysis is just a very quick comparison between you and an alternate product, or between you and not using the product, your product and not using the product, or between a competitor, if that happens to be what comes up inside that negative statement. So let's start unpacking these one at a time. Feel, felt, found. So this is one of the easiest, simplest, most effective sales ideas or rebuttals that have ever existed in sales. And the psychology behind it is you're relating to what the negative statement is, right? You're saying that's okay to have that feeling because many people have had that feeling before. And then it's relating back into a value proposition of why your product or service would overcome that latent fear, right? So, Mr. Jones, I can relate to how you feel. We've had a lot of other customers that have felt the exact same way before. What they found is using Overpass as your distributed sales force brings you talent, brings you talent within 3 to 5 business days that are pre-vetted, that are ready to go to work, right? So that would be an example as far as if it was an Overpass conversation I was having. Every product will be different, but the structure will be exactly the same each and every time. Our second one is going to be reduction to the ridiculous. So in this case, I can definitely relate, but doing business with Overpass, your investment in having a dedicated sales team and payroll facilitation is only $1 per hour. What would a payroll service alone cost you on a monthly basis? Right? So what we're doing is just going, our fee is so nominal that why wouldn't you want to invest $1 an hour to have a 24/7 on-demand sales team, right? With the ability to scale within 3 to 5 business days, that's only costing you $1 an hour. For those contractors that don't know how our pricing model works, this is kind of a little off subject, but on subject as far as this title. There's 3 different levels of engagement with Overpass. So whatever you guys make is what you guys make. In other words, we don't keep any of your money. All you pay for us is whatever it costs us to transfer your funds through PayPal or Wise or whatever payment option that you have selected in your profile. So the client actually pays a per monthly fee, depending on their level of engagement. So let's say the client was working on the Overpass platform and they had sourced one of you folks out of our contractor base, and we were doing the payment facilitation for them. That's about $1.50 an hour or $240 a month. If they're using their tools and they're just using your services as a contractor and we're doing the payment facilitation, that's $160 a month or about $1 an hour, right? Which would be the case of this example. And if they have other members of their team that they want to use our platform, that's also an option. They get a dedicated phone number, unlimited calling in the US and Canada, and a seat on the platform. And that is $120 a month or about 75 cents an hour. So reduction to the ridiculous. You can see how when you end your pricing with about so much a day or about so much a month or about so much over the lifetime of the product, you can reduce that price into something that sounds much more palatable to the client. So let's go on to the next. Coats and smokes close. This is a storytelling close. So, I'm not sure about you, but I know that personally I have a really bad coffee habit. So every day I'm going to go out and I'm going to grab my $4 cup of cappuccino. Makes my day go smoother. Love my coffee. This costs me about $120 a month, but it's worth it to me for the benefit I get. Can you see how whatever your dollar investment is, right? Let's say that we're doing this back to an Overpass analogy again. Could you see how $160 a month to start a sales force and keep scaling that sales force could give you an infinite reward as far as how much new revenue you could bring into your company? Make sense? And last but not least, comparison analysis. So in a comparison analysis, you're looking at the difference between your product and somebody else's. So with your options, you get A, B, C, and D. With us, you would enjoy E, F, G, and H. Can you see how this might be the best way for you to go? So let's say that I was talking to a client and they said, I'm also looking at using Upwork for a solution. And this happens to me several times a month when I'm in a conversation. And I go, that's actually maybe a really good idea for you. So let's look at the difference. With Upwork, you're going to get primarily a project-based platform that's meant for short-term engagement. Unfortunately, they actually use a payment model that part of the contractor's wages come out of their monthly, or their fees come out of the contractor's wages. So you're probably not going to get as good a sales talent using that platform, although they do have less of a commitment. And if you're not serious about building your sales team, that may be the best option for you. With us, what you would get is 24/7 access to dedicated talent. You're going to get higher skilled people since they actually get paid what you're paying them each month or each week, and their checks not being scraped from. You get a long-term solution that has access to platform tools that you can use if you need those to get your initiative going. So can you see how using Overpass is more uniquely designed for building a long-term sales strategy, other than just dipping your toe in the water to see if sales is something you need to do? Obviously, in sales, in business, we all need to do sales. Would that make sense to you? Everybody see that? Okay. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to keep replaying a typical Overpass sales presentation. I think there's amazing power in that, because you can see what we actually do every single day before you ever get to an interview. This is the conversation that's had with a client that we have day in, day out, and several times a day. We have 10 people in our sales force. There's a bunch of folks talking to clients all day long that lead to the posting of those jobs. Or in case of some leads, they've already posted the job and we're reaching out to them the first time before they start the interview block. So today, the ever so engaging Miss Ellen is going to be our client. I will be the Overpass account executive, and we're going to walk into a typical conversation of what would happen for a client that is already registered on our platform, that has come in. So without further ado,
Dennis, sorry, quickly, could we unshare your screen so that everyone can see your and Ellen's? Oh, perfect. Amazing.
I was just trying to find the little up button so I could find my screening thing. There we go. All right, are we there? Awesome. So in a typical scenario of what we would call an inbound lead, somebody registers, a client, a company registers on the Overpass platform. That automatically goes from Overpass to a CRM system, and it's automatically assigned to an account executive. So me as the account executive, I would come in, I would see that Ellen registered her business, which for the sake of example, let's call it Ellen's digital marketing. Let's just say that Ellen does digital marketing. I like it. Yeah. So in this case, I've already sent Ellen an email saying, hey, acknowledging her registering, setting up a time for us to visit. Now we're on what we would call a discovery call. So we're just going to walk through a typical discovery call with Overpass. So I'm reaching out to Ellen. Hey, Ellen, it's Dennis. Ring, ring. Hey, Ellen, it's Dennis from Overpass. I was calling. Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm actually having a great day so far.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So I'm calling about your registration with us. I looked in and saw that you had not done a job offer or a job posting as of yet. So I wanted to visit for just a few minutes with you, kind of get to know your business a little bit, help you understand how Overpass works better, so we can go ahead and move forward with the next step and get your job posted. Does that sound like a good plan?
Okay, sure. I do have some questions, some things I'm not sure about.
Great. That's why I'm here. We're going to go ahead and go through those, and I can answer any questions you have. Hey, one question that I had, by the way, how long have you guys been in business? How long have you been around?
We've been around now for about 5 years.
5 years. Awesome. What size is your organization today? I see you do digital marketing.
Yes. So right now, I believe we have approximately 70 employees.
Wow. Great size. Okay.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Awesome. So we can obviously tell you do digital marketing, but let's unpack that a little bit more. Are you a full product suite provider? Do you do like SEO, website enhancement, lead gen? What specifically, social media, what specifically do you do in that social marketing space?
Mostly website enhancement and social media. Okay. And we do some lead gen, yes.
All right. So would you say most of your clients, obviously they're business clients, but would you say that they would fall into the small business, medium business, or enterprise level size businesses?
I'd say mostly right now we're dealing with small to medium.
Small to medium. Okay, cool. So let's talk about your sales presence now. What does your sales structure look like today inside your business?
We're just starting to get together a business plan. We have one, a skeleton thumbnail sketch hammered out right now. We're getting there, and we're in the process of hiring a sales director and trying to get to the next stage of getting the word out of Ellen's digital marketing.
Awesome. So when you reference to the sales director, how far are you into that process?
We actually have 2 offers out, hopefully coming in soon.
Awesome. So you're definitely to the point where you're going to want to have that person engaged in your
Yes.
hiring process to build your team. That would obviously be a correct statement, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that new director is going to be directly responsible for the day-to-day activities of the Overpass folks that we put on board, correct?
Yes. Part of the interview process, we talked about this being a potential thing that's happening, and it'll definitely be a direction we're heading in.
Awesome. So let's talk about a number of people. How many folks are you looking for?
Right now, I'm going to collaborate with him, but right now I'm saying we're going to look for approximately 5 to start.
Awesome. That sounds like a great number of direct reports. I wouldn't go much over that, especially since you have brand new sales leadership as well. So that sounds like a great size team to start with. What type of a rate range? How are you looking at compensating these folks?
I think right now, again, I'd like further direction later, but I think we're looking at approximately the $15 an hour range.
Okay,
15
great.
to 20, maybe.
Awesome. And then what would you be offering as far as per sale, as far as a commission revenue?
The commission offering, again, we can hammer this out later with the sales director, but we're looking maybe about a 5% commission.
Okay, great. So we would definitely have people on the platform that would qualify, that would be readily available, ready to work, and that would work within that pay range. There's no issue there at all. When are you looking to get started? Let's say we're at Wednesday. So are you looking for that new sales director, I suspect, to start about Monday, right?
Yes, actually, we are going to have him. If this happens, it's going to be happening really quickly. So we'd like to get ramped up, pretty soon, maybe in a week and a half.
Okay, awesome. So we probably need to be looking at, he's going to need a few days to settle in. So we'd probably be looking at mid to late next week before we did some interview blocks, right?
Yes, he knows this is a hot topic for us, and we're going to charge it once he gets on board.
Awesome. Love that. Do you already have some sort of a job description worked out on what you would post?
I think that's something we were going to collaborate on together. So I have ideas, but we don't have anything firmed up just yet.
Awesome. Okay, no worries. The great thing about Overpass is in our job post, they're all drop-down screens. So literally you can post a job. It doesn't cost you anything. In fact, you never owe us anything until the day you hire somebody. So you don't have to worry about any upfront costs or setup fees. In fact, at the end of this call, once I get all your questions answered, what we could do is we could go ahead and get that job posted so folks could start applying, and we could start building some momentum. So you would have, and then I can also send you some profiles and go out on a hunt, find you some really qualified people and shoot those over to you. So you and your new sales director would have those to look at once he got boarded, and you could hit the ground running. How does that sound?
Wow, that actually sounds ideal. That sounds great.
Okay, great. So what questions do you have for me about how Overpass works or anything of that nature?
At this point, I'm just not really 100% sure how I feel about the concept of contractors for my business.
Okay, so interesting. And we have a lot of folks that feel that way. And what they found more times than not is there is a little bit of that nervousness or whatever going into a distributed or remote workforce to start out with. But what they also find over time is that it's actually, one, much faster to scale. Two, these people answer directly to you. So they do not work for us. They work directly for you. So you control the process, the marketing message, and their actual day-to-day activities. And then number three, they actually find that they end up saving money a lot of times over conventional hiring in the US. Does that make sense to you?
Actually, that does make sense. Now that you're bringing it to my attention, you clarified some of my questions on that.
Awesome. So let's talk about tool sets. So as we sit today, what type of tool sets do you have in place? Do you already have a CRM system or a dialer, phone dialer?
We have a dialer. We'd be considering a CRM system.
Okay. So at Overpass, we have 3 different levels of engagement. And before I get into that, let me go through like a typical, since you're starting a brand new effort, let me go through like a typical structure of starting a sales department. Let's say once we get these 5 folks hired, in their first month of activity, I can't stress enough, don't expect a lot of results because they're going to be getting used to your process, used to the sales presentation, and you're kind of going to be ironing the bugs out. And then what happens usually in the second month is you start getting some sporadic results. In other words, you don't have a full sales pipeline yet, but you do start seeing results out of that activity. And then by the third month, you usually have a sales pipeline established, and you can really start quantifying on what the return on your investment is. And you can start looking at scaling past those 5 seats. So when we talked about levels of engagement before, if you didn't want to use our dialer and you wanted to use our CRM, which already has an incorporated dialer in the CRM system, it's a great way to start, and you could always change later. But at that level of engagement, keep in mind that the contractor gets 100% of the money. We don't keep any of the contractor's money. So our fee for that would be $240 per month per seat, or about $1.50 an hour. Does that sound like that's pretty reasonable price, right?
You know what? It might sound reasonable to you, but right now it does seem a little pricey to me.
Okay, so let's look at our second option, which might be the one that better suits your needs. If you want to, excuse me, if you want to use that dialer that you already have, and even just get on HubSpot, which is free to start, and you can pay as you go, use that dialer combined with HubSpot. If we're using your tool set, you could actually engage for about $160 a month or $1 an hour. So that would save you some money. And then the third option is if you had anybody already on your team, you wanted to use our software, which would be, that'd be $120 a month. But I think the $160 a month is what would best suit your needs. You're only looking at about $1 an hour. And like you said, in comparison, you're looking at spending $15 to $20 an hour in labor. So that $1 an hour is really a pretty nominal cost. Let's say your max budget was 15, you could even offer 14 to cover that $1 cost. Is that something that makes sense to you?
It does. It sounds much more reasonable, that middle scenario, the 160 a month that you described, but I'm still unsure if this can fit into our company budget at this time.
Okay, so we'd already talked about you wanting the 5 seats and you going somewhere between $12 to $15 an hour. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. So let's say I'm imagining, since you have 5 people, you want these folks to work full time. So let's say they were $12 an hour and an 8-hour day, right? So you're going to invest, let's just say rough math to make this easy, about $100 a day per head at 5 people would be $500 a day, $2,500 a week, or about $10,000 a month. Would that be correct as far as your wage base, plus any commissions they might be earning?
Yes, you're really good at math. Now that you're computing it for me, that's sounding more and more reasonable.
So obviously we already had a $10,000 budget over here. So it probably makes sense when we put that in comparison to literally just a few $100s a month to have an unlimited supply of contractors at your disposal, have people that you could board within 3 to 5 business days starting out, and even as little as 2 days moving forward as you scale. Wouldn't it make sense to invest that extra $1 an hour, just adjust your offer out, and let's go ahead and get these 5 seats booked and on the and placed for you right now?
Yes, absolutely. It makes much more sense. I'll definitely bring that try to work that in with my fiscal people, because that sounds much more reasonable to me now that you've broken it down like that.
Awesome. We'll just adjust the offers out and we'll make sure you stay in budget as we move forward. And then we'll also see, because sometimes you can get a really good buy, but we'll look at the total cost average of your base rate, depending on the team that you end up selecting. And that could very well end up being around the $12, $13 an hour range, which could save you some money as well. So let's do this. Today's Wednesday. You have somebody starting Monday. Why don't we plan some interviews for next Friday? Would morning or afternoon be better for you?
Sure. I believe the afternoon will be better for me.
Awesome. So we'll plan those on Friday afternoon, let's say 2 o'clock your time. And if we're hiring 5 people, you need to line out about 3 hours of your time on 20-minute interview blocks. So let's just go ahead and carve out 3 hours. Is that something that you can dedicate to as far as time? Absolutely.
I do have one more quick question.
Go right ahead.
Now that you sold me on having contractors, I'm also considering a third-party call center. I've had some calls on that. So that's another consideration for me. So
let's unpack that. And starting out, a lot of times, depending on the product, that could be a viable alternative of a third-party call center. Let me explain a few things that we commonly see. In fact, many times when I have a client that mentions that they're going with a third-party call center, I'll actually encourage them to do that when they're first getting started. And I literally will tell them that they'll be calling me back within 90 days. But let me explain the why. The detriment of a third-party call center is this, and I'm not going to speak to any third-party call center. This is a generalization of all.
Okay.
What happens is you're usually paying them by appointment that they create on your calendar for a salesperson to close. So since you don't have any control over the process of how they're getting those appointments, the appointments usually end up being very shaky because their primary intent is to bill you for an appointment, not the quality of that appointment.
Okay.
The second thing to consider there is you are going to 100% lose control of your marketing message. So you're not going to be able to listen to those calls, see what's being said on the calls and see how that appointment's set up, nor will you be able to control what's coming out of that third-party company's mouth in order to have placed or booked that appointment on your calendar. Now, I'm not saying it's not something you should consider, but when you compare that back to being able to control 100% of your marketing message, have people working directly for you, wouldn't it make more sense to go ahead and invest in your own success and control your marketing message versus turning that over to a third party?
Yes, absolutely. You've definitely clarified some of that. I wasn't 100% clear on what they were going to offer me versus Overpass. So I appreciate that.
No worries at all. So do we want to go ahead and get that time booked on your
Yes.
calendar for
Yep,
Friday?
the afternoon works better. So let's
Okay.
book that up.
So we'll be 2 to 5 through Friday. And then what I'll have you do real quick now is go ahead and share your screen and I'll show you how we're going to get a quick job post in.
Okay. Sounds good.
Break. That's
And
it.
scene. Lovely.
And scene. So with that, you can see our typical Overpass conversation that we have every day with clients. It literally is that conversation. In fact, that Ellen did an amazing job. That's probably about the amount of rebuttals and or sales ideas we have to use in an average conversation. That is a very, very typical conversation that we have each and every day with clients. So let's do this. We're at 1/2 the hour, which means we time that out perfectly. Good job. We want to open this up each and every week for questions or comments from the contractors that have showed up today. So it can be directly related to our topic. And then also, Mia, we've been opening it up for questions about how to get hired, profile quality, things of that nature too. And just common questions that can come up as you're going through your Overpass journey. So let's go ahead and open that up and see what we get this week.
Yep. So you can raise your hand if you would like to speak. I can unmute you. Oh, and we already have someone raising their hand. If you do not want to speak, you can also put your question in the chat. Aduvi, we are very familiar with him. Aduvi, you can go ahead and speak. You can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, guys. Good evening from Nigeria.
Hi, Aduvi.
Hey, I'm very happy to say I got my first contract today.
Awesome.
Yay, congrats.
Yeah. So the lady I spoke with, the one that interviewed a week ago, she sent an email yesterday and I signed the contract today. I should start Friday. And I'm very excited. It's a B2C what kind of environment. So are there any ideas, any thoughts on how to really talk to, because right now what we have training for is really B2B, but any resource I could, get for B2C sales?
What is their product, Aduvi?
It's cosmetics, skincare, and hair care.
Okay, who's the client?
Shaneka, her name is Shaneka, sister-daughter.
Sister-daughter. I just pulled it up on the system. I just took a look at it. So yeah, when you talk about B2C, you're going to look at business to consumer. You're going to be looking a lot more at the actual products, and you also have a physical product. So the first thing you're going to want to do is drill down and ask your client and look at their sales presentation and see if you're armed with the right value proposition, right? Okay. First of all, what exactly makes that product different? Number one, why is it different? Why would it be better or a better alternative versus any competitive products, right? And then what's the value proposition for buying it? Now, that's the second part of the presentation. So the very first part would be discovery questions, Aduvi. So I
Okay.
would look at that client and look at their presentation and make sure those discovery questions make sense. And if they don't, maybe even recommend some or bounce some off of the client. So
Okay.
when I say that, it would be like, what would be typical discovery questions? What type of products have you used in the past? What type of results did those give you?
Okay.
What did those not do for you that you were looking for them to deliver to you, which would be why we're talking today,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
What do you consider to be a value to you? Is it the result of the actual product, or is that based solely on price? Those are the type of questions that I'd be wanting to ask a B2C client right up front and qualify.
Okay.
And then make
Okay.
sure I had a good value proposition to deliver to them. And then see if the client has typical questions, statements, or objections, exactly what we're going through
Okay.
and how she would handle those, right? How they would handle those if they were selling that client. So it's a
Alright.
3-part. So what do I have for discovery questions? What do I have for a value proposition? What do I have as far as a rebuttal or an objection handling if I get an objection on the call? Does that make sense, Aduvi?
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Thank you so much.
No
Maya,
problem
I
at all.
think I'm gonna have to watch this again. So I don't have to watch this part before I start. This really helped me. And thank you guys for all you do. Hopefully in the future, I get something that's higher paying than this, but this is a good start for me.
Aduvi, don't ever worry about when you first come on Overpass on your first couple of contracts. I often tell people to take their rate down and get on a contract so they get used to working with us. And then
Okay.
you can always leave in your profile considering opportunities. That will leave you open for searches from our account executives if there were better opportunities that came available that you're qualified for down the road. Make sense?
Alrighty. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
And we
Thank
have a
you, guys.
lot of contractors on our site that may have started at it $7, $8, $9 an hour that now make $15, $20 an hour.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Something
So
to
there's
look forward
some good
to.
news, including a couple
Yeah.
of my account executives, just so you know.
Wow. Cool. Great. All right, guys. Thank you. So
Awesome.
that's it.
Dr. Duvey.
Awesome,
Thanks,
Aduvi. Great
Aduvi.
question.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So now we have a couple of questions in the Q&A. So the first question is from an anonymous attendee. Dennis, I think you'll be really equipped to answer this. They say, do you guys review, or can you all review some of the job postings, as some of the jobs posted are commission only, or the commission states like $1,000? Basically, what is our process for kind of picking apart job postings at this time for those that don't
Okay.
look very legitimate?
So if you saw a job posting that said commission only, I can guarantee you they haven't talked to an account executive yet, or they already would have been off the platform. We don't do commission only positions, period. What we will entertain is a draw against commission. So in other words, they guarantee you, let's say $10 an hour, right? And I'm just using this to use round numbers for easy math. So $10 an hour, if you're working full time, that'd be $400 a week, right? Or about $1,680, $90 a month. Rough math in my head. So given that scenario, let's say that 1,600 could be a draw against commission. But if that were the case, you need to make sure they're paying a very lucrative commission, because you have to earn $1,600 of commissions before you ever start getting what you would call an override check. So when we talk to that client, just so you know, we're going to go through a compensation model and right up front go, I don't think your compensation model is fair, and I don't think we're going to attract any good talent there. So we will coach that client. Now, keep in mind, the reason that happens is we have a very open platform. So a client can come on, register, and post a job before we ever engage with them. So if you ever see a job that looks quirky, reach out to us, because we probably need to reach out to that client ASAP and get them back on the rails as far as what we will or won't do as far as Overpass. We do a lot to protect you guys, to protect all the contractor base, to make sure you're getting paid every week. And if we have a client that we feel has great ambition but no budget, they're out of here. Because how are they going to pay your payroll once a week, right? If they can't, or if they object to our fees, like this example we just had with Ellen, if you're already going to spend, this 10 grand over here in payroll, why are you objecting to this little bitty fee we have? Because if that's the issue, maybe we have a bigger issue if you haven't really considered what it's going to cost you to get started and ramped up in with a sales force, which is why I always would have also mentioned in that presentation, Here's what you should expect the first 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. So in other words, don't expect that you're going to hire someone and they're going to sell something the next week and you're not going to have any sales expense, because that is a absolute fantasy world. That does not happen in real life. They have to invest to groom, train, and develop that sales team to actually start delivering consistent results. I hope that answered the question.
Definitely did. Thank you, Dennis. And the attendee said understood. Thank you. So we are all set. J. Michael Martinez, one of our favorites, wrote in asking, thank you for the training and the role play. Question, who are we normally calling on within the prospective client's organization? Owner, CEO, sales director, etc. Also, what is the average length of the sales cycle start to close? When discussing pricing, is it normal, as in the role play example, to discuss these on the spot, or would it be discussed throughout the sales cycle as we understand more about the prospective client's business?
Well, it's about 6 questions. So start with the first one.
Yep. First question. Who are we normally calling on within the prospective client's organization when doing an overpass call?
Totally depends, but it's usually directly in correlation to the size of the company. So in other words, on a smaller company, we might be talking to the owner. On a very small company, right? On a mid-sized company, we'd be talking to sales leadership. And on a large company, we'd probably be starting with the recruiter or HR resource on very large entities. So it literally depends on the size of the entity. That'll give you kind of the scale. I will tell you this, it's not that we won't ever let an unqualified customer sign on the platform, but you're immediately tagged as an unqualified customer if you don't have dedicated sales management. And if we have a client that only wants one contractor, they literally have to ask me for permission to sign one contractor, because unless I'm convinced that that client is going to scale long-term, I'll pass. We're looking for people that want to build sales teams, not dip their toe in the water. Let's go to the second question, because there's a bunch of good ones in there. Let's just go one at a time.
A lot of good ones. What is the average length of the sales cycle start to close?
Totally depends on the customer's product. So we have clients that let's say we're talking to them and they say their average sales cycle is 6 months. We're immediately going to say, great, you need to be looking at $15 to $25 an hour range to start. So in other words, we're immediately going to bump the hourly rate if we know they have a very long sales cycle. Where if they have a very short sales cycle and decent commission plan, we're like, hey, you could probably place that for $12, $15 an hour. What does your average salesperson produce this right now, average in sales? How many sales per month, right? And we help them with that math to roll them back into a compensation plan that works. Does that answer that one?
I think he also meant the overpass sales cycle when we're selling to clients.
Our sales cycle is 3 to 5 business days from the day they post a job. It is a crazy lightning fast. It is 3 to 5 business days from the day they post a job.
Awesome. And then his last question is, when discussing pricing, is it normal, as in the role play example, to discuss these on the spot, or would it be discussed throughout the sales cycle as we understand more about the prospective client's business?
With a 3 to 5 day sales cycle, it's all discussed up front, period, end of story. We have 1 30-minute discovery call. That is it. So as long as we have all the decision makers in that discovery call, we are literally going directly for a close on the very first discovery call. Now, we may do a 5-minute intro call to get to a discovery call if we know that we're not talking with all the decision makers. But once all the decision makers are on board, it's all in one discovery call. We're going directly for the close. Let's get a job posted, get you interviewed, and get some folks.
Awesome. J. Michael was commenting throughout. Love it. Thanks so much. So you definitely answered his question, Dennis.
Cool.
We have a brief hiatus in the questions, everyone. So if you want to type something in the chat or raise your hand, I can let you speak. I'll give everyone a few moments. If not, I actually have a couple of questions for Ellen and Dennis, but I will let our contractors speak first. They have something.
Yeah, and these are great questions, guys. It's really important that you understand how we work in the background, how we attract you to a client, because I get a lot of questions of this out of our Facebook group too, on the contractor page. And there's really a huge misunderstanding that you applying for jobs is what's going to get you one. That's only going to be true 1 out of 5 times. Your profile is going to dictate 80% of the time if you get teed up for an interview, because all of my account executives are actually searching for your profiles in a search tool that we have, which we're doing on industry, your rate range, your previous industry experience, your rate range, and if you're ready to go to work. Those 3 every time. Yep. So keep in mind, your profile is more important than you applying for a position on the site.
Yep. Thank you, Dennis. We actually got a couple of questions. One from Lorato. She asked, any tip on how to deal with the gatekeepers, e.g. PA if the contact is on the system is an MD, but the person is not going to pass your message or transfer your call. We actually did a webinar on this, didn't we, Dennis?
I was going to say, we give you a link to a webinar on that. We did a whole webinar on it.
Yes.
So that's too much to unpack in one question. That's a whole session. I'd invite you to reach out, Lorato, and look at that webinar. Because I talked specifically on gatekeepers. That was about a month ago, maybe, Mia?
Probably a month. And just so everyone knows, if anyone wants to look at previous webinars, everything is recorded on our Facebook group. In the About section, there's a link to all of not only the recorded webinars, but also Dennis's presentations. So if you haven't yet joined the Facebook group, I'll pop the link in there so you can go. And we always record everything. So I will do that now. If you
not
want
trying to avoid your question, it's just too long to uncover in a simple answer. I will say, I think you mentioned MD. If that was a doctor you were referring to, you have a very hard contract, and two, you need to listen to that webinar about 3 times, because doctors, dentists, and lawyers are some of the 3 hardest people to get a hold of and get around their gatekeepers, just so you know. Or me, I'm worse. Getting to me is like rocket science.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Courtney is actually asking a profile question. She says, I tried applying for a lot of jobs. I changed my rate and my shifts to see if I have a better chance. She feels that there's a lack of something on her profile. Should she just wait until she gets a job while continuing to apply? Then if you could let me know, would it be helpful to do a screen share of her profile if she's comfortable, or do you want to follow up with her after the webinar?
I think I'd do it after, because sometimes I'm a little bit direct as far as being critical on your profiles, and I don't want you to feel bad in front of a jury of your peers.
Yes,
so if that's fair, I'll take a look at it after the meeting, me and I'll make some suggestions, and we'll get those back to you.
Okay, perfect. So I'll send you her information, Dennis. So Courtney, we'll get back to you after the webinar. Awesome. All right. Any other questions from other people? Anyone want to speak? You can raise your hand. Oh, yes, Dennis, go ahead.
And just so everybody knows, where, like the TA department is always available. I'm not always available.
Yes.
Like my calendar per day has 15 to 20 appointments on it. So I'm not an on-demand resource for you. But even on the contractor page, when people send me them, even through Messenger, when I'm off work and I'm done for the day, it doesn't take me any time at all. I go in there and I'll make some quick recommendations. But remember that the TA department is usually your best resource for that. But I'm always happy to help as well. Our big goal is to make sure you guys are successful on the platform and get a job that fits your experience, your skill set, and that you excel at.
Yeah. And I also want to mention regarding the TA support, we mentioned that it is best to schedule time with us via the Overpass website. So you just type in the blue chat bubble, hey, I want to schedule time with the TA, and you can do that straight from the website. We're always here to help. And like Dennis says, we're available. There's more of us and we're available to help. That's literally our job. So I would recommend that as well if you're wondering how to optimize your profile. Awesome. Okay, well, giving everyone a few moments. I actually had a question, Dennis and Ellen. One of the points you brought up was comparison to competitors. So you gave Upwork as an example. So what are some tips you have to best research the competitors so you're like prepared? Like, what if your industry doesn't have a lot of big competitors? Like, how do you kind of go about researching that to address that rebuttal?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting that Overpass doesn't have a lot of directly relative competitors in the sales space. So we have market competitors, but most of them are project-based platforms. And most of our true sales competitors are very small organizations in comparison to us. And a lot of times people don't realize that we're like 70 people. We're knocking on the door of 70 people inside the Overpass family. And we have thousands of contractors, and we talk to hundreds of clients every single month. So we're rapidly becoming even a larger 800-pound gorilla in the sales space. We're also bringing on CSR roles. But to get back to comparison, you should always ask your client, who are the most typical people that they compete against? And they are always going to know that. It's going to depend on the product, the field, the space, et cetera. And if you're not sure, one of the first things I do as a salesperson, which is what I did when I came to work for Overpass, I looked at every competitor and I did a comparative analysis in a spreadsheet. What do we offer that's uniquely different? Out of that, I picked our strong points, and that's what I talk to. That's what I talk to. Second thing is you have to be very careful. If you saw when Ellen and I were role playing, I was not talking bad about the competition. I was literally just saying, hey, maybe that's a good idea, but here's what you're going to find. In other words, I'm not going to tell you not to go to Upwork. I'm not going to tell you not to go to a third-party call center. That's extremely important that you do that, because the second you trash the competition, you lose. You can't, you just can't. So you can give them accurate comparisons, and maybe, and believe it or not, this may surprise a lot of people on this webinar. It's about 1 out of 5 times I recommend they go to a third-party call center or Upwork, because I don't want them on the platform. I want them to go have some active pain with a third-party call center or Upwork or Fiverr before they come back to us. And just so you know, 75% of them come back to us when they try one of those 2 solutions within 120 days. So we're not worried about it. It's like, we know we're not losing the customer. We're just putting you out on loaner for a while. And you're going to come back to us here in a minute. That's probably the best thing I can do to answer that question, or say, excuse me.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from our contractors? Or Ellen, I don't know. I haven't really heard from you. Any kind of other, given you're kind of newly joined to the team, any other kind of like tips or strategies in this specific topic, or even what you're noticing on the platform with contractor profiles? You can offer some of your wisdom as well.
Well, being on the newer side, this has helped me a lot too, to run through this and run through our specific objections. I haven't delved too deeply on the TA side to make any educated or knowledgeable questions. I've just been kind of training with people at this point. But I would just be emphatic about what Dennis said. Sort of sales 101 is just never bash the competitor. Uncover all you, be as educated as possible as to what the pros and cons are and everything, and just try to offer what you have, and hopefully it's a good fit from there. So just on that particular topic, I was nodding my head the whole time, because, you know, I used to be in pharma and we had a fair amount of competitors, and you just had to, you kind of lose credibility if there's any bashing on that side. So just at least on that topic. So
yeah. And to the point I was making is, literally, I think that our competitors are the best first start for a lot of the clients that register on our platform. In other words, I actually think that is their best bet.
sure.
If they literally, if I know that client doesn't have the budget to at least pay 3 months of payroll sitting in the bank right now, I want them to go to Upwork, because they can end up not paying you guys. Right. So I want to make sure they know what they're doing before they get on the platform, because we want long-term players. We don't want people that are trying to experiment hiring you guys.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I think we have some really good questions today. No, look, I give people 10 minutes back, right? So happy to end a little bit early today, everyone. Per usual, we will be sending out the recording of the webinar as well as the materials in the next couple of days, and you can access them via our Facebook group. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Dennis. You see him a lot on the Facebook group, and we really do appreciate you all taking the time today. Ellen, it was also so great to have you. Great to
Thank you for having me. I learned a lot.
Yeah, and we wish you all the very best day, evening, wherever you are. Thank you all again.
Have a good
Thanks
day,
all.
everyone.